The snow had just started falling again when Claire Weston heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside her remote mountain cabin. She glanced up from the fireplace, her brow tightening. No one was supposed to be out here, not today, not ever. Without notice. She put down her mug of tea and walked quietly to the window. Through the frost-glazed glass, she saw two black SUVs roll to a stop at the end of her drive. The vehicles looked official. A man in dark tactical gear stepped out of the lead car, followed by another with a police badge on his jacket, but something didn't sit right. No sirens, no flashing lights, and no warning. Claire had come to this cabin in Colorado to get away from everything's chaos of the city. The harassment from her homeowners association, and especially from people who thought they could control her. After she refused to pay outrageous fines and expose the HOA's shady finances on Facebook and Pinterest, the threats started. Strange letters. Unmarked vans parked near her street. Her IG account even got hacked. She never expected this. Not a fake arrest in the middle of nowhere. What the HOA didn't know. What they couldn't have known was that Claire wasn't alone this weekend. Her 6 closest friends, all former Navy SEALs, were inside. They'd served together for years, and had seen more than their share of chaos. After everything they'd been through, they trusted Claire like family, and she trusted them to have her back, no matter what came down that snow-covered road. Claire stepped back from the window and whispered, "They're here." Within seconds, movement stirred in the shadows. Footsteps padded across wooden floors. Quiet and controlled. Weapons weren't drawn yet, but every man was on alert. Claire's cabin might have looked like a cozy retreat on Pinterest, but tonight, it was a fortress. Outside, one of the fake cops stepped onto the porch and pounded on the door. "Claire Weston, this is law enforcement. Open up immediately." Claire didn't move. Neither did the 6 men standing behind her, silent and ready. Then came a second knock, this time harder, followed by the sharp click of someone testing the lock. And just like that, the trap had been sprung. Claire didn't flinch as the door rattled. She stood rooted in place, her breath steady, eyes locked on the handle that had just twitched. The fire behind her crackled low, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. One of the SEALs, Mark, stepped quietly beside her and whispered that badge was fake. Shoulder patch was off. Wrong stitching. She gave a small nod. Sensed it too. Real cops didn't come without backup warrants, or flashing lights, especially not in a place like this. It's tucked far from any Lowe's near me or a sign of civilization just 2 days ago. Claire had found another anonymous letter in her mailbox, claiming she owed the HOA over $10,000. In fines for things like excess grass height and unauthorized paint color. Ridiculous. Her house in town had been within code and she had proof. She'd posted the invoices and emails all over Facebook and Reddit, tagging the HOA's board members in every post. At first, they sent legal threats. Then came the online smear campaigns. Her pictures were edited and reposted on IG and Pinterest, calling her a liar. But it wasn't until someone tried to slash her tires in a grocery store parking lot that she realized this was no longer just about fees. It was about power, and she'd challenged it. She sold the house and moved up here temporarily, thinking isolation would bring peace. It had, until tonight. Another knock. Then a voice again, louder this time. "Claire Weston, you're under arrest. We have a warrant. Open this door or we'll come in by force." Logan, the quietest of the group, leaned near the back door and signaled. 2 of the others moved into position. None of them were looking for a fight. They were just trained to handle things when others came looking for one. Claire's heartbeat stayed calm. She knew this cabin inside and out. She had bought it years ago after a hiking trip and restored it herself. She'd even picked up supplies. From Lostel had the receipts to prove it. Now it was being turned into a battlefield by a group that wanted her to disappear quietly. But Claire wasn't the type to back down, and certainly not with her 6 closest allies standing shoulder to shoulder with her. Then, the sound they were waiting for, the door handle turned, and the lock gave way with a faint snap. The door creaked open slowly, letting in a rush of freezing air. Claire stepped back as the fake officer crossed the threshold, flashlight cutting through the dim light. His gaze swept the room, but he didn't see anyone. The fire still crackled in the hearth. A kettle hissed softly on the stove, but the cabin at first glance looked empty. "Clear," he muttered to someone behind him. He took 2 steps inside before Logan, crouched in the shadows behind the entryway, moved silently and closed the door behind him, locking it with a loud, solid click. The man froze. His flashlight trembled slightly. Claire stepped out from the kitchen doorway, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "You have about 3 seconds to explain who you are," she said quietly. The man's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Behind him, second imposter tried to rush in but was met by Mark, who disarmed him in a fluid, practiced move that left the guy face first on the floor before he knew what hit him. "You messed with the wrong woman," Mark said coldly. But Claire wasn't celebrating. She knew these two were just pawns. They hadn't come all this way on their own. Someone had sent them. And if they had enough confidence to break in, posing as police, then they believed she was alone and vulnerable. That meant whoever was behind this thought, she could be taken quietly, no questions. No noise. Claire walked past the subdued men and opened one of the imposters' jackets. No radio, no ID, just a cheap badge clipped onto a fake utility belt. This wasn't even a good impersonation. It was rushed, sloppy, desperate. What's the plan? Jake asked, standing near the back windows, watching the tree line. We don't call real cops yet, Claire said. Not until we know exactly who's pulling the strings. Just last week, a strange man had followed her through a Lowe's parking lot, pretending to ask about car batteries. She'd posted about it on Reddit's or Castries, and even on her Facebook page, warning others in the neighborhood. A few hours later, the post mysteriously disappeared. T tried reposting it. It was taken down again. Someone was scrubbing her digital trail. Now, two men in fake uniforms were on her floor. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, waiting. For her next move, Claire didn't know who, but she knew it wasn't over. Not even close. The wind outside had picked up, howling through the pine trees like a warning. Claire stood at the window, staring into the darkness beyond the porch, heart pounding, steady but firm. She could feel it in her gut. This wasn't over. Whoever sent those two fakes wasn't going to accept failure. It'd come again, smarter, louder, and this time, probably armed. The SEALs had secured the two men in the basement, zip-tied and gagged. Claire wasn't interested in hurting anyone, but she was done being hunted. She turned toward the others. We need to know what's coming before it arrives, she said, because it's coming. I promise you that. Jake nodded and opened his laptop, tapping into the nearby traffic cams and drone feeds they'd quietly set up days earlier. We've got movement on County Road 11, he muttered. 3 vehicles, 1 van, 2 pickups, no plates, no lights, coming in slow. Claire's blood ran cold. That road led straight to her cabin. 10 minutes, maybe less, he added. Mark checked the perimeter sensors. They're spreading out, trying to flank the cabin. This isn't intimidation anymore. They're here to take you. Claire swallowed hard. Just weeks ago, she was a regular woman arguing over HOA fees and ridiculous citations about her mailbox paint and a tree growing too close to the sidewalk. Now, she was in a cabin in the middle of a snowstorm, surrounded by ex-Navy SEALs, waiting. For a possible hit squad, it didn't make sense. Not unless the HOA wasn't just a board of grumpy neighbors, but a front for something deeper, something illegal, something worth silencing her for. She remembered the sealed folders she'd found. In her HOA file before she moved, redacted names, empty bank transactions. Her gut told her there was money laundering, or worse. She'd saved screenshots, posted them on Pinterest boards and Facebook groups. AIDA threads on Reddit blew up overnight. Then everything vanished. Jake looked up. We need a plan. Claire glanced out the window again, saw faint movement near the tree line, shadows shifting, snow crunching under slow, careful boots. We hold them off, she said, voice low and steady, and find out who sent them. A loud thump sounded at the back door. Then another at the front. They were surrounded. The thumping at both doors grew louder, more aggressive. Claire backed away from the window just as something pinged against the cabin's roof then again. Jake peeked out through the narrow upstairs window and cursed under his breath. They've got drones, small ones, scouting us. Mark rushed to shut the lights. Claire's heart was thudding, now not just from fear, but from how calculated this was. These weren't just neighborhood thugs. Whoever was out there had tactical planning and serious equipment. The kind you don't get from a hardware store or Lowe's near me. The kind you get when you're trying to erase someone completely. Suddenly. Logan's voice rang from the basement. Y'all need to get down here now. Claire and the others sprinted down, expecting the two imposters to have escaped. But instead, Logan was pointing to one of the men's wrists where a thin, almost invisible tag glowed faintly under UV light. That's military tech, he said. GPS locator. Someone's tracking their exact position. Claire stared. At the glowing chip, that means they knew they were caught. And they're still sending more. The room fell silent. Then Logan added, This isn't just about silencing you. You stumbled on something you weren't supposed to. They need to erase every trace, including us. It clicked. Claire's posts on Reddit, her warnings on IG, her Facebook rants about being followed, even the old photos she uploaded to Pinterest, they weren't just ignored. They were monitored. She remembered an HOA meeting where someone mentioned a security contractor. Didn't think much of it then. Now, it all made sense. This wasn't about her mailbox or her unpaid fines. It was about something buried in those financial records, maybe land deals, money movement, or illegal surveillance tech. She'd stumbled right into the middle of it. A new noise snapped them all back this time. Not a knock, but a voice through a bullhorn outside. Claire, Weston, you have 30 seconds to surrender, or we're coming in. Everyone froze. Then Jake said quietly, "Check the cameras again." Claire leaned in, watching the grainy feed from the drone above. She stopped breathing. Standing behind the van wasn't just more masked men. It was Thomas Miller, her ex-boyfriend, and former HOA, a board president. She hadn't seen him in over a year, and now he was here leading the charge. Claire's hands clenched at her sides as she stared at the screen. Thomas Miller, she should have known. He'd vanished from town right after she exposed the missing HOA funds on Facebook and Reddit. No one had heard from him since. Turns out he hadn't disappeared. He'd gone underground. And now he was back, standing outside her cabin, with what looked like a private militia. Why would he lead this himself? Mark asked, checking his rifle one last time. Because he doesn't trust anyone else to finish it, Claire replied. And because I know what he did. The 30 seconds ran out. Spotlights flashed through the windows. Boots crunched in the snow. Someone yelled, "Move in!" But just as the first shot was about to be fired, a loud horn echoed across the mountain, followed by the roar of engines. Everyone froze. Claire turned back to the screen, now showing headlights. Racing up the hill from the opposite side of the mountain? "Who is that?" Jake asked. Claire's voice was calm. "I had a backup plan." 3 black SUVs, real ones this time, pulled into view. They bore federal markings, and men in clean-cut uniforms began fanning out with weapons drawn. Shouting orders, Jake blinked. "You called the feds?" Claire nodded. "Last week. When I found encrypted data hidden in the HOA files, sent everything to a contact I trusted. They've been watching ever since." Thomas tried to run, but within seconds, he was on the ground, cuffed, yelling that Claire had stolen documents and hacked accounts. The federal agent just held up a flash drive. "You sent us enough evidence to open 5 federal cases," he said to Claire. "Money laundering, fraud, even illegal surveillance." Claire felt her knees go weak with relief. But as she turned back toward the cabin, Logan appeared from the basement, pale and shaken. "You need to see this," he said. They followed him down, where he held up a locked metal case the imposters had hidden in the ceiling panel. Claire opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of printed photos of her. At home, Eloise walking her dog. Sitting in her car, marked, dated, tracked, even after Thomas was in custody. Someone else had been watching, and they weren't done. Claire sat on the porch steps the next morning, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and a steaming cup of tea. In her hands? The snow had stopped sometime after midnight, and the mountain was still again, peaceful, almost untouched. But inside, she felt changed. Tired, yes, but sharper. She wasn't the same woman who had come to this cabin just to hide. The federal agents had taken Thomas Miller and the others into custody. They confirmed Claire's suspicions. Thomas had been using the HOA as a shell to launder money and fund surveillance operations. Most of the board members didn't even know, but Claire's digital trail, her posts on Facebook, her screenshots on Pinterest, even her early warnings on Reddit had been enough to spark interest in higher places. She never knew if anyone was listening. Turns out someone was. Mark and the SEALs stayed the night to help clean up. The imposter cops had been taken in for questioning. And Claire's evidence, everything from security cam footage to the data she'd pulled off IG and HOA emails, was now part of a growing federal case. Her name would be cleared. But more importantly, others in her neighborhood could finally feel safe. Still, the photos found in that metal case haunted her. Someone else had been tracking her movements for weeks, maybe months, and they hadn't been caught. Jake stepped outside and handed her a manila envelope. "They ran the serial numbers on the surveillance gear," he said. "Some of it wasn't linked to Thomas." Claire opened the folder. The name listed inside was someone she didn't recognize. Another shell, another layer. She exhaled slowly. "So it's not over," "No," Jake said gently. "But you've got eyes on it now. Real eyes." A few days later, Claire returned to town. She passed the old house she'd once fought to keep still standing, still painted that same unauthorized color. But this time, she didn't look at it with regret. She smiled, knowing she never needed their approval. She'd fought back. And won as she pulled into the Lowe's parking lot to grab lumber for repairs at the cabin. She noticed a woman staring at a letter from her own HOA. Claire walked over and simply said, "Keep everything, screenshot it. You never know when the truth might save you." And then she walked on, stronger than ever.